If you've driven cars in Mumbai, in Delhi, Bangalore, Pune, or any of the more busy streets in India, you've probably realized that it's really hard to do. You go first and second gear, there's clutch and brake all the time, it's painful. This week, we have a new development. We have driverless cars coming in. Uber's announced that a few of its fleet has gone driverless. So we're going to be talking about the repercussions of that, whether or not it could happen in India. Ayush, you got to tell us a little more about the Uber development.
Well, there's several developments, Alex. Thanks so much for joining us on Bloomberg Queen, guys. We are actually, first we should tell them where we are and what we're doing today. We are actually seated in a taxi today. Alex, and there's someone who's joining us in a bit as well. And we're actually driving around Nariman Point and Marine Drive. We thought we'll take it outdoors, figure out whether driverless cars can work in the first place. What Alex was talking about was Uber and the big news. That every week we get some big news about Uber, and Uber has essentially come out with a fleet, its first demo or trial fleet in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is a very difficult terrain to navigate anyways, but they've been working on it for 2 years. Well, but they're not the first people to come out with it. Right now, it's Ford Fusions. There'll be 12 more. I think there are 4 initially, so there'll be a fleet of 16. There's also a company called Nutonomy. Nutonomy is a Cambridge-based company which actually chose its trial run to be in Singapore for a host of reasons. We'll discuss it with you in a bit. But Nutonomy in Singapore has already set it up. It's very different. It's really different in Singapore than it is in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a much older city. Well, it's long winding terrains, bridges, narrow alleys, and those Ubers are functioning on those routes right now as we speak, right? Of course, they look like some sci-fi stuff with lasers, cameras, and the like, but the ones in Singapore are a little different. It's a very set, route in the island nation, and it's much easier to go out, really work out there. People adhere to rules a lot more. It's a planned city, but that's essentially what happened. I'm not going to tell you a lot more about that because there's so much to talk about when it comes to driverless cars. So with us today, we have a guest, and he's right at the back out there, Siddharth Rathore. Sid, thank you so much for joining us on Bloomberg Quint.
You're most welcome, my pleasure.
All right, now I'll give you a little bit of an introduction on what Sid does. All right, he's not dressed in black and white today, but he's actually a very bright young lawyer in Mumbai. He's an associate at Nishit Desai Associates. And he doesn't look at only all those things in the corporate world and all those tax and policy things that we talk about on Bloomberg Quint. Well, he also, in his spare time and his work time, well, he authors reports such as this one on driverless cars. So, Sid, there's a number of legal, economic, environmental, social ramifications to driverless cars. You're going to tell us what your research has been when it comes to driverless cars.
Yeah, so I got interested in the driverless cars concept in 2010
Right.
when Google introduced its cars. And, I used to do casual reading like all other, youngsters these days who are like excited about new technologies. But at Nishit Desai Associates, we really believe in, thinking of the future and what would happen in the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
And we believe in anticipating and preparing and then delivering once the practical issues arrive. So I got the opportunity to work on this paper, look at the legal issues, look at the legal ramifications. Also, with special reference to India. I know a lot of people are skeptical about the fact that whether the cars will come to India or not. But whether you see a driverless car plying on the streets of Bombay, it's certain that India will play a big role in the expansion of the driverless cars in the world because we have the most number of engineers, whether it's software engineers, we have the youngest population in the world, so we will be driving the technological revolution to a great extent in the 21st century. The concept of driverless cars is very, leaving aside the technological aspects. When the first driverless horseless carriages had arrived in 1880, which was introduced in Carl Benz's exhibition in Munich, people were really nervous because they were not used to seeing carriages being, driven by a machine. And the municipal authority of Munich also passed laws saying that these horseless carriages cannot ply beyond city limits. Right now, there's still a lot of skepticism with regards to driverless cars. There's the recent Tesla car crash and a few more other examples. But when you think about driverless cars, you think about issues such as liability, data protection, standard of performance and care. Because think about a scenario where you get into an accident. Usually there's the fault liability, right? Whose fault is it? But in a scenario where a driverless car crashes, as we saw in the recent Tesla case incident, the issue of liability is very complicated, because whether it's the manufacturer, whether it's the person who created the algorithm, or whether it's some defect with the intelligent transport system of the city which is at fault. So apart from that, issues such as data protection as well, because the driverless car would know wherever you're being dropped, and all your information will be on the cloud and will be on the net. So
but before we get to really the intricacies of driverless cars, the repercussions, the economic, social repercussions of it, for our viewers, can you give us an idea as to where we stand right now in terms of the technology? Who's really working on driverless cars right now, and how soon are they likely to launch their technology?
So in the next 5 years, you will see a lot of car companies as well as software companies introduce driverless cars into the streets. Tesla, Elon Musk has preponed his launch date for the fully autonomous vehicle to 2018. He had earlier said 2020. Audi, Toyota, BMW, and a lot of other car companies who don't want to be left behind in the race are really investing into the technology. You talked about Uber. They are collaborating with Ford. So what we're going to see, apart from the fact that these auto leaders of the world, like the BMWs or the Audis or the Mercedes Benzes, a lot of other companies who are able to adapt and innovate, whether it be a software company or a company such as Google or Apple, there's going to be a lot of increased collaborations between software companies and car companies. Google was never known to manufacture cars. They are looking to get into that. Tesla, for example, Audi wants to create its own software, its own it's already created and is working on it, has a beta version. So these are the companies that come to the top of the head. But even in India, for example, you may have heard of the Mahindra Reva, the subsidiary of the Mahindra company. They have been working on the electric driverless car, and they actually have a competition where people can come up with ideas how to make it more feasible. And so it's a very fascinating world and exciting times, free flow of information and technology. And basically whoever is able to lead the race is going to benefit the most from it.
So Siddharth, it's actually a beautiful day outside. It's a little overcast in Mumbai. Normally it's incredibly hot, but today it's overcast and very pleasant. So we're going to take this opportunity to actually step outside onto Marine Drive and to talk to a few people perhaps. But Siddharth, when we're talking about the driverless technology, my thinking is, and I'm one of the skeptics. I'm definitely somebody who's driven in the city and also in Pune, which is quite close by. And I've spent hours together. Sometimes I spend hours getting to office because it's so crowded on the streets. Is the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, one of the most important aspects when we're talking about driverless technology? And does that really need to support driverless technology?
I mean, of course, like you already mentioned, if you see the cities that Uber has launched its driverless fleet, for example, Pittsburgh and also Newtonomy in Singapore, these cities are very organized. The infrastructure is very organized and in place. People follow the rules. In fact, in Pittsburgh, when the driverless cars were being driven, people, not driven, when they're flying by themselves, there were people in cars, we have to get used to the terminology, but people in cars who were driving themselves while they're waiting behind the driverless car, they were actually getting irritated because the driverless car was waiting for the signal to turn before it took a right.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Sid, I'll tell you one more thing. I came out because the weather was amazing, Alex.
I was just telling them.
And you guys were in this cramped up, typical Mumbai sort of an setup, and we thought let's get out because let's get to Mumbai in all its beauty and splendor. Yeah. When you talk about driverless cars, right, we must be very wary of one fact, right, Siddharth? The fact being that be it the Google crash, which was essentially the bus that it had to, it met with an accident.
Crash. Yeah.
There was a Google and a Tesla crash both, right? So there were two crashes essentially. And have there been reports of more?
There will be. I mean, there are. But the thing is, as this happens more and more, people get used to it. If you see statistically, even Elon Musk had made the statement right after the Tesla crash that statistically the the probability of a driverless car getting to a crash is much lower than in the case of a human being.
Right.
But people are not used to it. It's one is the technological advancement, and then the other is the acceptance by the people, whether
Right.
it's in terms of culture or whether it's in terms of policy making. And as we know, legislations are always a step behind innovation, right?
But is that only a India specific problem or a global problem?
It's a global problem.
I'll come to that. I'll come to that. So you're saying that, yeah, of course, regulation only follows innovation, right? When a disruptor comes in the space and then you say, hey, you know what, this needs to be regulated now. But what about, why can't we think of a scenario where we're talking about this right now in 2016, right, Alex?
Yeah.
Why can't we envision, why can't we fathom what it would be like, lessons learned from the West and what's happening in Singapore as well, and say, hey, you know, if you're getting this in Mumbai and unplanned Mumbai in all its beauty, then perhaps we can think of a scenario where regulation precedes innovation. Can't we look at that?
So I may digress a bit here, but if you look at the history of economics, the industrial revolution happened over a period of time,
Right.
and the Western world comes up with it advances in a way. The advantage of third world economies is you can play catch up. You can see how the West does it, and then you can emulate. So either we can choose to be at the forefront of it, or we can be in a position where we are able to harness the benefits and the potential and maximize them. We can ape. Indian companies are the best at adapting. We can either innovate new technologies ourselves, but also learn from the West and catch up. The US has started experimenting with driverless cars since, let's say, 2010. Once they're done with the experimentation and once they've had their issues, we can just iron them out. So that's a way of looking at it.
I love, just as a side note, I love the way that Siddharth puts it. Like a good lawyer, we can adapt and learn to ape. Oh, fantastically put. Before you guys move on with this fantastic conversation, I'm going to go to the Aam Aadmi, the Janta, and find out whether they actually think driverless cars could work. Since we're outside, let's make use of this opportunity. Hi.
Hi.
My name's Ayusha. I'm from Bloomberg Quint. Do you work in this area, somewhere close by?
Yeah, I work in a HDFC bank.
Okay. So we're basically doing a show on driverless cars, okay? Which essentially means, do you take an Uber sometimes to work?
Yeah.
So imagine if I told you, in a few years from now, it's already happening in America,
Yeah.
alright? In a few years from now, you're not going to have a driver in your Uber at all. Would you be able to believe that concept? And kya baithoge us gaadi mein?
I think it will be a great invention, and if in real it happens, it will be a very good invention in India as well. In America, in foreign, it has started, but in India, if it happens, it will be a great invention.
Would you sit in that Uber?
I'll probably see first. If it's safe, then why not?
You would. So clearly, Alex, so that there is a positive sentiment out there. Alex, you were talking about something else before I kidnapped you guys from that.
It's actually interesting. Siddharth, it's something that if you're talking about the economic ramifications, the recent RBI governor, he's changed now, Raghuram Rajan, in a speech, he actually talked about the economic ramifications of driverless technology. And they would be huge, right? On the insurance sector, car insurance would probably not exist anymore, because once they get their processes in order, you would stop seeing car crashes, right? On the other hand, you'd have a lot of...
On the other hand, it would, if I may think of a scenario where you want to choose to drive, right?
Yeah.
Because you love driving, you will have to pay a higher insurance premium.
Okay.
Because statistically, you're putting society in danger by choosing to drive yourself to continue your enjoyment of the driving pleasure. Yeah.
So it's essentially disincentivizing now what is status quo to make improvements in technology possible. But what would be the other economic ramifications of something like that?
The economic ramifications will permeate across all sectors. Think about, for example, if you own a driverless car, or you don't need to own cars anymore. Tesla is speaking about how you can put your Tesla car back into the system when you're in office, and it can go and pick up people. And so your car will earn for you while you're sitting in office. There'll be no need for parking space. So imagine the real estate that opens up.
Yeah.
You can have parks You can
Not only
have-
that, you would essentially, if that model were to be followed, it might be a little far-fetched and science fiction sounding right now, but if that model were to be followed, then you'd have significantly less cars on the road. So,
You will,
so
because-
the infrastructure wouldn't be creaking anymore, right?
It won't be creaking anymore, and more space will be freed up because when computers, they're coordinating with each other, they don't require as much difference in space. It's purely mathematical. So imagine a mathematical precise arrangement of cars on the streets. That's going to be so efficient. There'll be no need for traffic signals.
Right.
In an ideal scenario, when all the cars are driverless, because the cars can seamlessly coordinate and avoid collision.
Ayush, I think you found a few more people to speak to.
I did. Before I do go to random people and talk to them anyways, there's also a comment on Facebook. Mr. Giridhar Joshi is saying, it will be safe, guys, because human beings are reckless drivers.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
absolutely
so
true.
that's one aspect. There are people who I'm speaking to as well, and they're saying, of course we'd sit in an Uber, of course we'd sit in an Uber without a driver, because a lot of the millennials, a lot of the young people think it's really cool, right? But, right now, when it's human beings, there are certain ethical dilemmas we have anyways. The question is, right, there's a legal dilemma, there's an ethical dilemma.
Yeah.
And there's a fine line, Sid, right? Do you think that supercomputer or that computer which is highly advanced, even in the next 2-3 years, will that be able to substitute human emotions, human thinking, and the fact that humans can discern really in aspects like
In fact, this issue is also being talked about in the West as usual. I hope people in India start talking more about it. But the issue where you are buying a driverless car, now you have the option to choose between a software and algorithm to be installed in the car, where in a case where it has to either swerve to avoid a pedestrian or to protect the person seated in the car, what percentage or what probability would there be
Right.
of the decision that it makes? A survey was done of people in California, and so when a third person, for example, if I asked you on the street, you would say that it's better that 5 pedestrians get protected instead of that one person sitting in the car.
Right.
But if the same question was asked to a person who would be the person sitting in the car, he said, no, I want to get protected. I mean, sad, too bad for the 5 pedestrians, but I want to get protected. So these things will be discussed, and the point is, while the issues actually start taking place, hopefully we'll have a system in place or some regulations in place,
Right.
which will help decide. Like probably have, some safeguards in the car where in such a scenario you avoid the pedestrians or you just shut down or things like that. I mean, these are exciting times. Like my guess is as good as yours how things will unfold. But all we can do is, think about the present. I mean, what the present current infrastructure and scenario is, what the legal framework is right now, and imagine a situation wherein what would happen if, for example, tomorrow driverless cars were introduced. Right now we are not prepared for it. Legislations are not there, regulations are not there. Even the Western world is coming to terms with it. But sooner or later, like all technological revolution, is going to spread all over the world and it will become the norm. Soon, just not having a driverless car in your economy would be too efficient to sustain yourself in this competitive world, right? And have the comparative advantage vis-a-vis other countries. So
And it's also interesting, Sid, because I think there's a stat, Alex, where they actually talk about these driverless cars. Not only will it free you from doing things like driving a car, but it also gives you, I think, 50 minutes, 50, nearly an hour more of productivity, and you can do whatever you want with that, right? I think that will play a key factor, especially in the big cities, where people essentially, when they're driving to work, for some people it's a de-stressor. I know Alex is going to say it's a de-stressor for Alex to drive down to work, but I love going in an Uber because I can do so many things, right? I can respond to mails, I can play a game, I can, FaceTime or Skype someone, I can even do my work, I can, start writing a script for my next show. So there are several things that I can do.
It's actually a very interesting. So we've actually spoken about the economic ramifications of it, but the social ramifications, right? Perhaps at some point of time, we're already debating about the regulations and whether or not they're in place, and also whether something like insurance would be used to disincentivize using your own car. But at the end of the day, transportation and the use of transportation is a choice. I can choose to take a train home because that would be faster and more efficient. But because either I like driving or it's a status symbol for me, I would want to have my own car, right?
You know, it's interesting because so while this isn't any more technology of the future, this is the present, guys. The fact that Uber and autonomy have already started, Tesla, Apple, Google, BMW, Audi, everyone is planning this already. They've already started, conducting their trials. There are issues with regulations and rules. For example, Sid, I remember that in some states in the US, a lot of these are happening on the East Coast because on the West Coast in California, there are several regulations when it comes to not having a person manually driving the car. But even this Uber stage and even in this autonomy trial sort of demo stage, they do have two technicians sitting in the car, right? If God forbid something happens, he will be able to take the wheel. In fact, there were a couple of journalists in the US during these Pittsburgh trials who actually took the wheel because there's no laws against people testing the car as well, right? So,
in fact, there's the Vienna Convention on Road Traffic from 1968 was amended in 2014,
right,
wherein the regulation was inserted wherein it allows you to use an autonomous system in the car, but it requires the driver to be present.
Yeah.
So now, the Vienna Convention was on road traffic was in 1968. In 2014, they've allowed for autonomous driving, but having the driver in the car. As the technology improves and as it becomes, comes closer to 100% perfection, then maybe another regulation could be added where you needn't require a driver. The entire definition of a driver might just be erased from the books. A lot of people might be skeptical about it, but like in all technologies, like who would have imagined we'll have a supercomputer in our pockets,
Absolutely.
like iPhones. Absolutely. So it's very difficult. It's very easy to be skeptical, but technological advancement is also exponential.
Yeah.
What changed in the last 5 years will change the next 5 months. The change might be as fast.
Yeah.
So, coming back to the social ramifications, I just wanted to add to what Alex said. They're also talking about how the cost of transport will go down because if you don't have a driver, you don't need to pay for it. Optimum fuel usage as well. So this will increase the access to transportation for a lot of people, like elderly or even children who need to be dropped to school. You don't have to have a driver. A parent doesn't have to go and drop the child at school. This will also not only reduce the dependence on mass transit, but in fact do it away with. Like if you can have cars summoned at your address and dropping you there.
I'll tell you something, Sid. When you're talking about social ramifications, there's one flip side to that as well. And I know what your point's going to be, but I'm going to state it anyhow. Is that if, Uber and Ola and Didi and all of these companies, ride-hailing services around the world promise is a lot of jobs in economies, right? That is the flip side. Because if you think about it, look at what happened last week with Ola and Mahindra, right? They promised, 40,000 driver partners. Well, Uber and Maruti, Uber and Tata, Ola and Nissan. What they're doing is they want to empower driver partners, right? So you're talking about creating employment. Governments are happy saying, of course, this is going to sort out all our unemployment problems, right? And people have started thinking that this is a lucrative profession. And the social stigmas with it have also reduced over the years. It's also kind of cool to be making 1 lakh, a month in an Uber and Ola in India, right? I've noticed this from all my conversations with Uber and Ola drivers. But of course, do you think that those few jobs which will be created in the technology industry, or perhaps which will those actually offset the job losses which will be caused because of this whole automation?
See, there's a lot of discussion and debate about this as well. And with every technological revolution, for example, Henry Ford's assembly line, that in itself caused a lot of anxiety in people because they thought, oh my God, we're going to lose all our jobs. But human beings also, when one job goes away, you get manpower and skill power freed up for a lot of other things. In fact, if you tell me, this is a lot of people come and become Uber drivers. But it's not really a skilled job. It doesn't really empower you for the rest of your life, if you think about it. If you look at it in a positive manner, not having the option to just go and become a driver might actually, force people to look at like other more like highly skilled jobs. And in fact, while, there's going to be like the stats which say that 3 million or 300 million drivers will go out of job. However, at the same time, other jobs will increase. For example, whether it's to do with software or whether it's with the management of the intelligent transport system in cities,
I agree.
or whether it's entertaining someone, providing entertainment to someone sitting in a driverless car.
Perhaps,
So,
yeah.
you know,
Well, even media and entertainment would be impacted as well.
Exactly.
Alex has been running around. Every time he goes out of the frame or I go out of the frame, we're running around trying to make new friends here on Marine Drive. Alex, you found someone?
Yes, absolutely. And for the people who are joining us right now, we're actually discussing driverless technology because Uber last week or this week has introduced a few demo vehicles that have been operating in Pennsylvania.
Which are
Right?
Ford Fusions for now.
Yeah.
But eventually we're looking at Volvo coming in.
Yeah.
And that's going to be interesting because all safety doubts would be dispelled all of a sudden, right? When Volvo comes into the picture.
So the possibilities are phenomenal. We can all agree on that. Whether or not it'll take place in India is another matter altogether. But simply with the introduction of Uber and Ola, Ayush, we're already seeing a lot of migration towards these two operators because if you've stayed in Mumbai over the last
city.
if you've stayed in Mumbai over the last few years, you will have noticed that at certain times in the day it's really hard to get a black and yellow taxi. You know, so you have certain unwritten rules that state that if you're going from Marine Drive down this way, you know, you can only go towards Dadar. But if you're trying to take a cab from this end of the road and you want to go, say, to Nariman Point, they'll say no. So I'm actually going to speak to a couple of people here. They've ridden here, and I'm sure that they enjoy going on long rides, perhaps to the hills whenever they get a chance. But I'm actually going to ask them, if you have Uber or Ola driverless technology come into India, do you think that would actually work?
Maybe, but the system should be correct for this. You know, we have such kind of mentality that person don't need. They have time to stop at the signal.
Yeah.
So that should be correct first of all.
Right.
I should say.
And also, see, I'm sure that you've experienced this as well. I just talked about it. When you're going home in the evening after your 12, 14 hours, that is normal in Mumbai, you want to get home quickly, but the Kali Pili doesn't want to go. So with the introduction of Uber, the driverless guy is not going to be able to tell you, I don't want to go, right? That'd be a good thing, right?
Yeah, it would be.
So do you think that you would sit in a driverless car? Would it freak you out? Would you be scared about it?
Yeah, sure. Right now, because it's a very far road from a for a driverless car. Because when I heard about Tesla and Apple, the system is not perfect.
Right.
And they are trying, but right now they haven't achieved anything. Like if I go and sit in the car, in the driverless car, and it will get me home.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would take probably 10-15 years.
Okay. So we have actually people who've heard about the Tesla crash and who are actually talking about it and saying that they're not confident that the technology will get them home safe. Now, that of course has been the subject of a lot of debate. So we have people on the street, people we've just met, who think that driverless technology in India, or perhaps even in the rest of the world, may not come anytime soon, though we're talking about it now. Is it really important to bring the regulations in place, though, in anticipation of that technology coming in?
well, the thing is, theoretically, one can say that yes, you should anticipate and get the regulations. But in a country as like India, even if you table a bill pertaining to a driverless car, there's going to be so much hue and cry because we have so many other issues that we have to handle. Having said that, there's no harm at least being prepared for a scenario where, in fact, if the technology comes, how do you cope with it with the existing legal infrastructure? Because we all know how long it takes for a bill to become an act in Parliament. And we have a lot of other issues to handle, whether it's malnutrition or I can list a number of things.
course.
So what I try to do with this paper as well is that, study the existing issues, existing legal infrastructure, and see how it can be managed within that. And driverless car is not the first technology that will be coming into India where the legal infrastructure is not ready. For example, take this Reliance Jio thing, for example. There's so much legal debate about it, whether, competition issues or even issues pertaining to, Idea and cellular and all going to the High Court and...
But specifically on this driverless car technology, I am assuming that one of the most important benefits, Siddharth, of driverless technology is that the environmental benefits may just outweigh a lot of other issues that could crop up, right? So, for example, in Delhi, when you had the whole emission problem, ideally, when you have driverless technology, you would assume that over a period of time, already you have less cars on the road because Ubers have been flying, right?
Exactly.
So you would assume that with driverless cars coming in, a lot of environmental problems related to emission would actually be solved, right?
Yeah, think fuel optimization, mileage, think not having to stop at signals, and efficiency of cars on the streets, opening up of real estate leading to more scope of parks, and just the general, the complete efficiency of the entire system would lead to so many environmental benefits. The fact that people can ride and hail, like we already see with Uber, the whole concept of carpooling and sharing, and a driverless car would just open up one more seat. In the.
Aish, do you want to take this forward?
I do. And forgive me for interrupting because I did walk away in between. But I ended up speaking to people. Well, there were a bunch of girls who were speaking in Thai, and I didn't understand Thai. I tried using Google Translate, guys. It doesn't work because it backfired on me really, 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 really embarrassingly. So I'm not going to bring that up in this Facebook Live.
The beta version.
Yeah. So I'm not going to use. Please don't use Google Translate as a tourist anywhere around this world. But let's come to a more local topic, because clearly speaking to foreigners is not going to help. Sid, Alex, we'll ask people through the course of this conversation as well. Sid, from a purely legal standpoint, right? Let's get into local laws and regulations. We have the Motor Vehicles Act, right? We have other regulations as well. RTO would have issues. Registration would be an issue. So we spoke about, even insurance companies would be hit saying, an insurance premium would go down. Perhaps that's one of the insights that you have. But what happens if I was to actually say, hey, if Mr. Modi was to speak to Mr. Musk again, saying get your driverless cars here, or get Uber's driverless cars here, if Mr. Kalanick said yes, or Bhavish from Ola said yes, and you get these driverless cars here on a pilot basis on Marine Drive, on a fixed route, what would the first regulatory and legal hurdle be, and how do I solve that?
In fact, if I can mention Roshi John of Tata, he was the first guy to install the driverless technology in a Tata Nano. But the only thing that was preventing him from testing it was permission from the traffic police.
Yeah.
So, you can give temporary permission for it to be plied, but if you're talking about the appliance of driverless cars on a commercial basis, it's going to take a while, because India as a country is generally very apprehensive about such technologies. The Google Street View, in fact, was disallowed by the government of India since after the 26/11 attacks in November, because they thought that, mapping technologies would help terrorists, perpetrators of terrorism repeat such attacks. So a bill called the Geospatial Information Bill has been proposed. It's still at the proposal stage, where every time you use a mapping technology, whether it be checking in a restaurant on Facebook, or any app or software that uses mapping technologies, would have to obtain licenses. So if that bill becomes an act, can you imagine the scenario with the driverless cars? Right now, I don't think it's very simple that Mr. Modi can talk to Elon Musk, because we are a democratic country and we have necessary regulations.
No, hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, but on an experimental basis, I don't see why not. And the idea is already being introduced here. Gurgaon has driverless pods now. They're going to introduce that soon.
Yeah.
And it's just about people being able to accept this new technology culturally, as well as
So there are social stigmas, of course, right? It is. It's very humid. It's always humid in Mumbai. But I have another message I've just gotten from Rohan, who stays around the area, and I think he's seen us whilst we were shooting. And he has a beach buggy, right? A quad bike. And even with him, the issue is when he takes it out on Marine Drive or Worli Seaface, just to give you a perspective of how 20th century laws don't solve 21st century problems. Right? That's the classical proverb. Because when he does take his beach buggy out on the roads, it's a four-wheeler, but it's essentially a beach buggy, what you'd be using in on a sand dune or something like that. His issue, Sid, is that there's no proper license for what he uses. Right? And the cops over here interpret it in a way saying, hey, you can't use this right now. What we'll do is we'll give you a challan, and you drive it for the course of this particular stretch, and then tomorrow again I'll give you a challan, because there's no real regulation to support what he does. Maybe it's a misinterpretation, but those are the kind of issues we're facing in Mumbai right now.
And the problem is most of our regulations are, a lot of the definitions, or even the language, the drafting that is used is very vague. It's not
Yeah.
very specific.
Yeah.
So that leaves a lot of scope for interpretation.
Yeah.
That employs people like lawyers and helps us, keep interpreting the law. Otherwise, but with cutting edge technologies, I guess, like even governments and policy makers are, maybe they're not as much like, in step with the cutting edge
Yeah.
technologies, but I think with the free information flow and, it's just societies, you ask the person there, they are aware of the Tesla car crash. People on the streets are thinking about these issues.
Yeah.
People have a supercomputer in their pockets. They have access to the latest information, the latest developments in the world. So as it becomes more and more, as people talk about it, as the thought process starts,
Yeah.
soon it will reach the doorsteps of the parliament as well. And, you never know.
You say doorsteps of the parliament, then you're rubbing it in that obviously I've left the field of law and now I'm in the media. So I'm feeling bad that I'm not a lawyer anymore on these fantastic things. But at least, Alex, being journalists, we can stand in the middle of Marine Drive and talk about this to anyone, right? That's the beauty of us being here. But Sid, I'll tell you what. So we spoke about socio-economic, legal ramifications. There's an environmental ramification as well. You guys spoke about it?
when you weren't here.
And I did hear you guys a bit, but one point that I must talk about, you said, the doorstep of parliament, say policy makers, right, the legislators, the Supreme Court, the Delhi High Court, the NGT, they all get involved when it comes to pollution matters nowadays, right? In fact, there's
All matters. Pokemon Go as well.
Pokemon Go as well. In fact, you have lawyers coming in and filing a PIL there. But the thing with environmental issues is there's multiple jurisdiction, right? Who is imposing what on Delhi? Which cars are getting banned? It just gets so confusing nowadays. With these driverless cars coming in, do you think this would placate some of their concerns, at least saying there'll be less congestion, there'll be less, and also considering that all of these Ola, Mahindra, Tesla in the US, and a lot of cars are experimenting with hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles. Considering this, coupled with the fact that they're going to go driverless now, do we look at some of these environmental concerns, if they were to come into a place like Delhi or Mumbai, which is quite polluted, well, would we see them placating some of these concerns?
See, then again, it's all about how you pitch it, right? And when it comes to pitching, you have the involvement of the companies who are interested in this technology, and the policy makers who they can get, whose attention they can gather. So, I think there are enough arguments for a driverless future, and if not in India, we're going to see examples in the West and how, the improvements that it's bound to have, like to the functioning of a city. And I guess, right now we can be defensive and apprehensive. We're always careful, like, oh my God, that's new, let's be careful. Uber has had so many issues just by being the taxi fleet with drivers by itself. So there are going to be strikes, there are going to be protests. But as history has shown you, there's always protests and strikes in every technological revolution. But then soon society accepts it and it's squeezed out. Only time will tell how we handle this situation. We can predict it, we can have some idea, but you never know. Sometimes people surprise you, sometimes society surprises you. In cities like Bombay, in fact, so cosmopolitan, people are ready to embrace.
I agree.
People, all they care about is getting home and, having more time. If you tell people you'll have more time, you'll have this environment.
That makes it much easier. And I don't know about society and Mumbai and Pittsburgh and everything, but I know one guy who's very excited about this, and he's standing right beside Sid and me. That's Alexander Matthew.
Hey, I was actually going to talk about that, just taking this on a lighter note. I know for a fact that when I'm in the car with Ayush, thankfully I'm driving, because Ayush tends to get a little distracted, taking in all the sights and the sounds of the city of Bombay, especially when he's going down Marine Drive. So definitely if there's a driverless car, Ayush at least, or his folks and his friends, will be more comfortable with the fact that Ayush will be safe and sound rather than looking outside the window. He's not going to be worried about crashing into anything. So we've had a very interesting conversation. Thank you, Siddharth, for joining us. We've discussed the socio-economic, legal ramifications of driverless technology. Whether or not driverless technology can come to Mumbai, to Delhi, to India is another matter altogether. Perhaps they'll bring in technology that's far superior to even that's what's being discussed right now, and it might just be a reality in our lifetimes. So thank you for joining us on this Facebook Live. If you have comments, please put them in, and stay tuned. Next week around this time we'll bring you another very interesting topic to talk about.